Right now, Su Jie felt terrifyingly strong. Even against a second or third layer Heaven Taoist platform realm expert, Su Jie felt he could still put up a fight. The higher the cultivation level, the harder it is to challenge higher levels, but Su Jie had this confidence. Now, it's time to consider how to break through to the Taoist platform realm. Only at that level can one be considered a significant figure who can call the wind and summon the rain in the Tianyuan world. Su Jie murmured to himself, filled with anticipation for the future. The secret realm involves cultivating the 5 internal organs, the essence from these organs reaching the 7 orifices. This is the path to the Taoist platform realm. The 7 orifices correspond to the sea of consciousness. Each orifice opened corresponds to 1 layer in the cultivation, totaling 7 layers. Sounds easy, but achieving this is extremely difficult. One only needs to compare the secret realm and the Taoist platform realm to see this. In the vast Ghost Ridge Palace of the Demon Sect with dozens of secret realm elders, there is only one Zhang Junwei at the Taoist platform realm. If breaking through to the Taoist platform realm was easy, there would be several more figures at this level in Ghost Ridge Palace. Every person has 7 orifices: food, hearing, sight, breath. The ear is the essence orifice, the eye is the spirit orifice, the nose is the chi orifice, and the mouth is the transformative orifice. Where should I start? Su Jie murmured to himself, planning to meticulously plot his path to the Taoist platform realm, attempting all 7 orifices to find the best breakthrough point. After tidying up, Su Jie turned and left the underground poisonous insect training base. Breaking through to the Taoist platform realm is not something achievable in a short moment. Su Jie has time to ponder slowly. After this period of training, Su Jie has been in secluded cultivation for a week. Immediately upon emerging, Su Jie received a call from Lu Yingying. Su Jie, the beautiful country's election has ended. Jessamine won the election victory. The moment the call connected, Lu Yingying reported the most heavyweight news to Su Jie. Oh, the pro-war faction has taken power. Good news. Let's give them a welcome gift. Celebrate along with them. Hearing the news, Su Jie instead showed a smile, considering this quite good news for him. On November 9, 2028, the beautiful country's election finally concluded. Because of the scandal from the Los Angeles Olympics and the subsequent Camptown incident, despite President Lawrence's best efforts to shift the blame, he was still burdened with the fallouts, causing his public approval ratings to plummet continually. Originally, Lawrence still had a slight chance of winning, but in the final stretch before the election, a series of scandals erupted fiercely, causing his support to completely collapse. The outcome was clear. The Democratic Party's candidate, Jessamine Holland, a vigorous president just over 50 years old, successfully ascended, taking control of the beautiful country, the Blue Star Dominator. One of Jessamine Holland's campaign slogans was to crack down on the Jekka Group, severely punish any forces that dared to challenge, making the beautiful country great again. His methods compared to his predecessor Lawrence were much tougher. He was a staunch pro-war faction. To be precise, the forces backing him included the military-industrial complex as the main pushers. Having been nominated, the elected needed to fulfill political promises, giving due returns as there are no free lunches in this world. This is also the result of interest conflicts between capital tycoons. The competing sides support different candidates. Whoever's supported candidate gains power will see more benefits and development during the term. It's often said that new officials set 3 fires. Mere hours after his inauguration ceremony in January next year, Jessamine signed up to 19 executive orders, nullifying 12 of the procedures implemented by former President Lawrence. Among these new executive orders were initiatives to strengthen cooperation with Thousand Island Strategic Alliance member countries, expand domestic arms production and procurement, and increase the troop presence across various Southeast Asia outposts. Simultaneously, Jessamine actively removed dissidents, swiftly appointing a batch of his trusted officials. These appointees didn't just represent one person. Behind them were entire industries or massive interest groups. Many among them had worked for or cooperated with arms companies, and their appointments signaled Jessamine's interest orientation. One surprising decision was to keep Judith as the CIA director, continuing his tenure. Meanwhile, seemingly in opposition, on the same day as beautiful country's new president's inauguration, the JECA Group grandly announced the completion of the Kra Isthmus Canal and held a massive celebration for it. In Siam, Kra Isthmus Canal. On this day, numerous high-ranking officials and wealthy merchants attended the event. As an investor in the Kra Isthmus Canal, Wang Lin from Wanda Group was also present. The scene for this ceremony was set in a luxury hotel built by Wanda Group. From the hotel's observation deck, one could see the surging waters of the Kra Isthmus Canal. This Kra Isthmus Canal is about 700 meters wide, over 60 meters deep, and 102 kilometers long, capable of navigating all the world's known ships. Approaching the canal, many supporting facilities were already set up. Docks, ports, cranes, warehouse areas, railways, etc. Seeing this grand canal, Wang Lin couldn't help but praise. What an extraordinary work of architecture, completing it in such a short time. This engineering prowess is astonishing. Wang Lin also knew that the canal had actually been dug through some time ago. It was only the completion ceremony that had not been held yet. Mr. Wang, this way please. At this moment, a staff member from JECA Group came over, leading Wang Lin to the celebration site. Here, Wang Lin saw many heavyweight figures such as the president of Chan Country, the king of Siam Baya, the president of Anan, and other high-ranking officials from various countries, as well as representatives from friendly nations like Hua Country and Russia sent by JECA Group. Of course, leading the group were naturally the core figures of JECA Group, Su Jie and Lu Yingying, along with numerous high-level executives of JECA Group. If Wang Lin had not participated in the investment for the construction of the Kra Isthmus Canal, he would not have had the qualification to stand here and be part of this group. Now, I declare the Kra Isthmus Canal officially open for navigation and operational from today onwards. Su Jie held a pair of scissors, cutting the red ribbon to complete the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Click, click. Amidst the sound of celebration fireworks, media reporters from all over the world pressed their camera shutters to capture this moment. As Su Jie finished the ribbon-cutting, shadows of large ships slowly sailed over the Kra Isthmus Canal. Naval fleets from the 5 countries of Southeast Asia, led by Chan Country, Anan, and Siam, with frigates and destroyers, slowly navigated through the canal. From the shore, one could clearly see Navy soldiers standing on both sides of these warships. They would be the first batch of ships to pass through the Kra Isthmus Canal, demonstrating JECA Group's capability to connect the Andaman Sea and the Siam Bay without passing through the Malacca Strait. The presence of warships made the atmosphere even more fervent, though journalists from Beautiful Country and Japan displayed disdainful expressions upon seeing these warships. There's no need to elaborate on Beautiful Country's journalists. Their country's navy is the #1 on Blue Star, boasting the combined strength of the 2nd through 9th-ranked navies. They claim their navy alone can confront all other navies in the world, embodying the utmost confidence. Of course, despite such claims, Beautiful Country often leads a large group of countries rather than confronting multiple nations alone when it engages in warfare, exposing its rogue nature. As for Japan, although they don't exhibit World War II-era prestige, their naval strength still qualifies them among the top 5 globally, even surpassing the Great British Empire in naval power rankings. It's noteworthy that when Great Britain was known as the British Empire, their Royal Navy claimed it could challenge the combined navies of all other countries. Japan currently has 60 to 70,000 active Navy soldiers and over 100 naval vessels weighing more than 1,000 tons, totaling a tonnage of 800 and 1,000 tons. On average, frontline warships have a full load displacement of 6,800 tons, equipped with 4 amphibious assault ships, 4 large landing ships, 42 destroyers, 15 frigates, 30 submarines, and 36 auxiliary vessels. In contrast, even with the combined naval forces of 5 Southeast Asian countries, JECA Group's naval strength remains insignificant. The top navies among the 5, Siam and Anan, rank beyond 2030th globally. Their impact in the Southeast Asia Sea area is marked by the strength among lesser competitors. Such naval power might uphold dominance among Southeast Asian countries, though it pales against Beautiful Country and Japan's navies. Hence, witnessing the warships in the Kra Isthmus Canal, Beautiful Country-led journalists reacted with disdainful expressions. After the ribbon-cutting ceremony, it was time for the press conference. JECA Group's forced excavation of the Kra Isthmus Canal has severely damaged local natural and marine resources. It has also hurt the sentiments of countries like Temasek, Johor, and Jawa, disrupting the normal maritime order. Is JECA Group using the Kra Isthmus Canal to control a global shipping choke point, forcing other countries to sell their interests? After answering questions from some of its own journalists, when it was NBC journalist from Beautiful Country's turn, the questioning became sharp. Upon hearing this, Su Jie simply smiled and replied, "The benefits of constructing the Kra Isthmus Canal are self-evident. It effectively shortens the distance of Eurasian continent maritime transportation. If talking about environmental destruction and threatening other nations, then the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal should also be blocked. Is the Kra Isthmus Canal opened by JECA Group also free of charge?" A Japanese journalist eagerly stood up. Japan, being resource poor, relied heavily on import-export trade, with many ships passing through the Malacca Strait. Using the Kra Isthmus Canal could reduce over 1,000 kilometers of voyage, minimize wastage of several days, saving substantial costs. The Japanese journalist asked this because the Malacca Strait is toll-free, and if the Kra Isthmus Canal also were free, even Japanese shipping enterprises would be tempted. "We adopt differential fees. For friendly countries, we charge minimal fees. For unfriendly countries, the fees would be raised somewhat." Su Jie smiled, hearing which a Japanese journalist's complexion slightly changed. Japan would undoubtedly be on JECA Group's blacklist. Such differential treatment is excessive and contravenes international law. The Japanese journalist couldn't help but say, knowing the shipping canal charge proposed by Su Jie would be costly. Haha, JECA Group is sanctioned by many countries. At those times, you don't call it differential treatment. Not allowing the commoners to light a lamp while permitting the officials to set fires, we also have our sanctions. Su Jie said disdainfully, turning to continue naming other journalists. With the conclusion of this Kra Isthmus completion ceremony, the news of the canal's opening rapidly spread in all directions, particularly garnering attention from India, various Southeast Asian island countries, and nations with significant vested interests. Many investigative moves were underway, making the situation instantly turbulent. Beautiful Country, Black Palace. Judith pushed the intelligence report onto the table and said, "Mr. President, this is the situation. On the day you completed your inauguration ceremony, the JECA Group announced the completion of the Kra Isthmus Canal. From behind the firm desk, the newly inaugurated president of the Beautiful Country, Jasmine, picked up the intelligence report and read it word for word. It contained detailed intelligence and analysis about the Kra Isthmus Canal, including photos taken by on-site reporters, satellite overhead images, and the potential consequences of the canal's completion. After reading through it all once, Jasmine laid down the document expressionlessly and said in a deep voice, "Is the JECA Group doing this to provoke me? I used to think the JECA Group's actions were arrogant, and now it seems I have somewhat underestimated them." Jasmine didn't expect that just as he had become president of the Beautiful Country, the JECA Group would give him such a show of force. Why didn't the Kra Isthmus Canal get completed earlier or later? It happened to be completed on the same day he attended the inauguration ceremony and officially became the 48th president of the Beautiful Country. It's clear who this is targeting. This is exactly how the JECA Group operates. Otherwise, they wouldn't have become our crucial threat. Judith shook his head. He knew the JECA Group best, having dealt with them for many years. Under Su Jie's leadership, the JECA Group grew from a local warlord in Chan country to a major force, always relying not on courtesy and modesty, but on strong and aggressive tactics. Generally, a force growing this way would likely provoke widespread anger and be destroyed midway, and the JECA Group was no different, attracting many enemies. However, unlike the normal trajectory of development, most of the JECA Group's adversaries were wiped out by them in turn. Because besides being aggressive, JECA Group's core strength lay in their military power. Even if others disliked the JECA Group, it was extremely difficult to do anything about them. Has any country made a statement on the completion of the Kra Isthmus Canal yet? Jesmond didn't dwell on that and asked about the Kra Isthmus Canal situation. What country? Russia? Saudi Arabia? Iran? Judith listed off dozens of countries, basically those that frequently traverse the Eurasian continent, especially those with significant oil trade. The opening of the Kra Isthmus Canal means sea voyages will be more than 1,000 kilometers shorter than passing through the Malacca Strait, saving nearly a week's time. A large ship traveling through the Kra Isthmus Canal will save significant shipping costs. The reduced time will also improve the operational efficiency of the ships. Originally, a ship could only make 10 round trips between the Eurasian continent in a year. Now, with the time saved by the Kra Isthmus Canal, it could make an extra 1 or 2 trips per year, and this increased operational efficiency translates directly into money. Not to mention that many goods have time requirements, and the faster they are delivered, the better. So many countries. Jesmond frowned. The Malacca Strait is one of the busiest straits in the world, with about 100,000 ships passing through it annually. 70% of East Asia's energy is transported through the Malacca Strait, accounting for 1/4 of the world's maritime trade. Now, with the Kra Isthmus Canal disrupting things, the importance and strategic position of the Malacca Strait will greatly diminish. There are still many countries hesitating. The European Union, Japan, Korea, and others are considering whether to join this canal. As Judith was speaking, his phone in his pocket suddenly vibrated a few times. Taking it out, Judith saw a message from a subordinate regarding the Kra Isthmus Canal. What is it? Jesmond noticed Judith's expression change, with a hint of joy in his eyes. Mr. President, the JECA Group has just announced the toll charges for the Kra Isthmus Canal. They will charge friendly countries based on cargo tonnage at rates of $4 to $8 per ton, averaging $5 per ton. For a large ship carrying 100,000 tons of cargo, the average transit cost would be around $500,000. However, the JECA Group has classified our beautiful country, Japan, Korea, the European Union, and several other nations as unfriendly, doubling the rate to $1 million. Judith showed the information on his phone to Jesmond, which made him heave a sigh of relief. I was originally wondering how to force those countries to use the Kra Isthmus Canal, but now it seems we don't have to worry. The JECA Group has helped us. Jesmond couldn't help but laugh. Seeing the JECA Group's blatant targeting, those European Union and Japanese shipping companies would save him the trouble of issuing mandatory orders. Moreover, his administrative orders could at most govern the beautiful country. The shipping companies of other nations might not necessarily comply. Earning profits and saving costs is the instinct of any business, or rather, any capitalist. With the Kra Isthmus Canal offering such savings in shipping costs and time, it would be hard for those shipping companies to resist the temptation. But now it's different. With the JECA Group's differentiated toll scheme, those Europe and America shipping companies wanting to use the Kra Isthmus Canal will likely reject such blatant robbery and return to the Malacca Strait. The JECA Group made a bad move. They thought controlling the Kra Isthmus Canal would give them power over everything. Such high tolls will surely prevent a significant reduction in traffic through the Malacca Strait. Judith smiled. Originally, he was worried that the Malacca Strait's shipping volume might reduce by 70 to 80%, as the Kra Isthmus Canal was indeed too convenient. However, the manipulative operations of the JECA Group showed Judith an opportunity for change. This kind of extortion would only cause resentment among Europe and America shipping companies, leading to a significant loss and collective resistance from them. Let it swell, as Hua Country's saying goes. If you want to destroy it, let it first go crazy. Jesmond rotated the Blue Star instrument placed on the table, staring mockingly at the Southeast Asia region under the control of the JECA Group. A power force without enough foundation suddenly becoming strong would lead to a rapid expansion of its mentality, resulting in arrogance and self-importance, whether it be a country or an individual. In Jesmond's view, the JECA Group was currently in the realm of being overly confident and arrogant without recognizing its situation. I just took over. How did Lawrence handle the Thousand Island Strategic Alliance affair with the CIA? Jesmond laughed a few times before suddenly changing the topic. Judith's eyes flickered slightly upon hearing the name Lawrence, causing a slight awkwardness in the atmosphere. During Lawrence's office term, Judith was a staunch supporter. He personally led a team to California to capture the governor of California and the mayor of Los Angeles who were opposing Lawrence, offending the Democratic Party behind them. If it hadn't been for his last-minute betrayal, choosing to side with the Democratic Party, he wouldn't have possibly seated in this position. The scandal that broke out during the end of Lawrence's campaign was also Judith's handiwork. For a person who rose from being an agent to becoming the CIA director, loyalty is relative. If Lawrence's ship hadn't sunk, he'd have stayed loyal on board. But once the ship began sinking irreparably, smart people would find another way out. Judith was such a smart person. Hence he preserved his official hat. Don't worry, I am not here to settle old scores, nor am I interested. The only ones hostile to you are the few high officials in California. Jesmond knocked on the table. The reason he continued employing Judith, besides Judith's quick allegiance, was his extensive work related to the JECA Group during his CIA tenure, making him the most knowledgeable person about them. Removing Judith would leave them unable to find a more knowledgeable person about the JECA Group. Being CIA director is not a position just anyone can take. During Lawrence's term, we intensified our support for the Thousand Islands Strategic Alliance, actively drawing its member countries closer to us. For instance, we bribed a batch of high-ranking officials from India's ruling party to create trouble over the Kra Isthmus Canal. In Temasek, we've prepared a coup to install a pro-beautiful country regime. In Johor, Judith's expression remained calm as he slowly explained the CIA's operations within the Thousand Islands Strategic Alliance. The Thousand Islands Strategic Alliance served as a naval blockade to stifle JECA Group's expansion, and the CIA put considerable effort into it. Large investments and personnel were dedicated to ensuring that, at crucial moments, these countries stood by the beautiful country, preventing JECA Group's expansion. Excellent. The JECA Group's movements are becoming more significant. We need to prepare beforehand. Jesmond was satisfied with Judith's work and took out a document from the drawer. Upon seeing the document, Judith's pupils shrank. Beneath the 4 characters, Top Secret, on the cover was a line stating JECA Group Strategic Tactics White Paper. Judith looked up and met Jesmond's gaze. In Jesmond's smiling eyes, Judith picked up the war planning white paper and opened it. But instead of detailed combat plans, it was under the name of addressing the JECA Group threat, promoting the expansion of production lines and arms procurement by the major military-industrial giants of beautiful country. The numbers made Judith's heart race. Judith understood. The key was not necessarily to wage war against the JECA Group. The key was that these military-industrial giants could legitimately and reasonably demand increased arms procurement from beautiful country under this pretext, just in case war does occur. Jesmond represented the interests of the military-industrial complex, and this move was perfectly reasonable from their perspective. Mr. President, are we going to wage war against the JECA Group? Judith couldn't resist asking, his heart pounding at the thought that if beautiful country decided to take action, not yet. This white paper still needs further research and discussion by the military. It's just a framework for now. War requires thorough considerations and pre-plans, not a spontaneous decision. Jesmond waved his hand, signaling Judith to remain calm. Although waging war against the JECA Group aligned with the interests of the military-industrial complex because it meant more arms sales, Jesmond was not solely driven by their interests. The JECA Group wasn't to be underestimated. It was a formidable opponent that beautiful country needed to take seriously. If the war turned unfavorable, his approval ratings would drop, jeopardizing his chance for re-election as beautiful country president. Even if war were to happen, it needed a suitable timing and justification. I understand. Judith comprehended Jesmond's intentions. The CIA served as the president's sword. By showing him this white paper, Jesmond hoped the CIA could act as either the spark to ignite the war or as an inhibitor, keeping the situation under Jesmond's control. As for Jesmond, although his campaign team seemed to be working for him, in reality, many of them represented the interests of the capital consortiums behind the scenes, sometimes having opinions that diverged from his own. In contrast, Judith, the CIA director, had betrayed the Republican Party and had conflicts with the Democratic Party, leaving him with no backing. The only person he could rely on was this president. His presence could actually be used by Jessamine. I trust you, Judith, and believe you won't let me down. Mr. President, I am always loyal to you. Judith nodded solemnly. Although he had betrayed Lawrence not long ago, it was out of necessity. Now, with the more assertive Jessamine in power, he had no choice but to align himself with him to maintain his position and honor. Kra Isthmus Canal. The sun was high in the sky as a large oil tanker flying the flag of Japan slowly approached the entrance to the Kra Isthmus Canal. Captain Ishikawa Junpei stood in the helm, seeing many ships from Hua country and Russia already navigating this newly completed canal. As the first captain from Japan to attempt passage through the Kra Isthmus Canal, Ishikawa Junpei had brought the Hongshin Maru cargo ship here. This cargo ship was operated by Mitsui O.S.K. Lines from Japan, one of the largest shipping companies in Japan and also a Fortune Global 500 enterprise. At the entrance, a guide ship had already emerged. Since the arrangements had been made in advance, Ishikawa Junpei wasn't surprised, and soon the guide ship came alongside. As the ladder was lowered, a pilot from the JECA group climbed aboard the Hongshin Maru, a large cargo ship with an overall length of 366 meters, a width of 48.2 meters, a maximum draft of 16 meters, and a maximum deadweight of 147,000 tons, capable of carrying 13,000 standard containers. Hello, I am Ishikawa Junpei, captain of the Hongshin Maru from Mitsui O.S.K. Lines, Japan. Ishikawa Junpei greeted in fluent English with a smile, holding a bundle of cash to make a good impression. A ship from Japan that's on the unfriendly list. You know the rules, right? The pilot from JECA Group glanced at him, pushing his hand away with a meaningful tone. What rules? Ishikawa Junpei just arrived today and hadn't caught on to the latest announcements regarding the Kra Isthmus Canal. For your Hongshin Maru to pass through our Kra Isthmus Canal, you need to pay a navigation fee of $1,630,000 US. As soon as the pilot said this, Ishikawa Junpei's mouth dropped open as if petrified. Because the price was exorbitant, passing through the Panama Canal for their ship would cost at most several $100,000 US, making the Kra Isthmus Canal's fee seem like daylight robbery. What did you say? $1,630,000 US for navigation fees? Are you trying to rob us? How is this price calculated? Once Ishikawa Junpei reacted, his face looked as if he had eaten something foul. Ha! If we wanted to rob you, we'd have detained you long ago. The fees are set. Take it or leave it. The pilot snorted, tossing a list of fees to him. In addition to the navigation fee, you also need to pay $13,000 US for port charges, $2,700 US for harbor authority fees, $8,575 US for management fees, $5,890 US for docking fees, $3,600 US for garbage disposal, $26,150 US for escort tugs, and $30,360 US for lighting fees. With each number spoken, Ishikawa Junpei's expression worsened, and his hands holding the fee list began to tremble. In his years as a captain, braving the winds and rains of the open seas, this was the steepest canal management fee he'd ever encountered. The charges were almost a blatant proclamation that this was a black market. You either pay up or give up crossing. After taking a few deep breaths, Ishikawa Junpei pointed to other ships navigating the canal, angrily asking, "What about them? Did those ships also pay such high fees?" "Them? They're from friendly countries. Their fees are only half of yours." The pilot's words made Ishikawa Junpei break down completely. "Fine, I concede to your ruthlessness, JECA Group. I'll avoid this route." Ishikawa Junpei was gnashing his teeth, feeling deeply humiliated by the discrimination. "Get lost. We don't welcome you Japanese here. Many other countries are eager to use our canal." The pilot raised his chin proudly, not even sparing him a glance. "Fine, I'm leaving." After taking a few steps, Ishikawa Junpei suddenly realized he exclaimed with a dark face, "Wait, this is my ship. You should be the one leaving." As if I'd contaminate myself. The pilot curled his lips, turning to disembark. "One day you will regret this," Ishikawa Junpei shouted at the pilot, expressing his rage. "Discriminating and using double standards, it's not just Japan that won't accept this. Other countries never will either. Discrimination? If we put up a sign saying Japanese and dogs not allowed to cross, then it would be discrimination." The pilot mocked, swiftly disembarking the ship. "Damn it, Baka!" Hearing this, Ishikawa Junpei turned red with rage, jumping up and down, and raising his middle finger at the pilot's retreating figure. "I swear, I will never return to the Kra Isthmus Canal as long as I live. Even if I drown in the vast ocean, you can play your game alone." Ishikawa Junpei secretly vowed never to return to endure such humiliation. He would continue to use the Malacca Strait. Compared to the exorbitant transit fees charged by the JECA Group, going through the Malacca Strait, though adding an extra 1,200 kilometers to the voyage and extending shipping time, still ends up being much cheaper overall than taking the Kra Isthmus Canal. With such a comparison, he naturally chose to go through the Malacca Strait, unwilling to be subjected to the JECA Group's tyranny. As the JECA Group announced the Kra Isthmus Canal's fee standards, the global shipping industry was shaken to its core. On Blue Star, no canal has ever implemented such discriminatory pricing. The JECA Group's actions were clearly discriminatory towards hostile countries, creating a double standard in pricing. Many globally renowned shipping giants and small to medium-sized shipping companies condemned the JECA Group, denouncing its actions incessantly. "This is a disgrace to the shipping sector. The global shipping community must band together to resist the JECA Group's unjust treatment. We demand fairness and equality. The JECA Group is behaving inhumane. They are a cancer causing harm wherever they go, and now they bring that harm to our shipping sector by implementing such double standards. The Kra Isthmus Canal might not have even been built. As long as the JECA Group does not restore equal pricing, we will avoid using the Kra Isthmus Canal. Let's see how long it takes for them to recover the canal's construction costs. It's a test of endurance." Many veterans and authorities in the shipping industry came forward to heavily criticize the JECA Group, accusing it of disrupting the fairness of international shipping with its operations in the Kra Isthmus Canal. But notably, all these critical voices were from EU countries or lackeys of the beautiful country, such as Korea and Japan. As for shipping companies in Hua country and Russia, no one criticized the JECA Group. Because with the initiation of the Kra Isthmus Canal, their ships enjoyed genuine convenience when passing through. The cost was just half of what European and American countries had to pay, saving them shipping costs and time, thereby giving them a competitive edge in the market. Since both travel to and from the Eurasian continent, bypassing the Kra Isthmus Canal can make their journey a week faster than those using the Malacca Strait. Many freight shipments are time-sensitive. Previously, cargo owners had to seek more expensive fast ships or alternative transportation methods. But now, the time saved by using the Kra Isthmus Canal has made shipping companies from Hua country, Russia, and Saudi Arabia more attractive to time-sensitive cargo owners. The beautiful country and other Western nations haven't been idle. They've imposed similarly high discriminatory fees on the Suez Canal and Panama Canal, targeting the JECA Group and Southeast Asian countries. But it seems the beautiful country has forgotten that their sanctions against the JECA Group have never ended. The JECA Group has hardly any goods to sell massively to Europe and America, nor do they have many ships venturing out, let alone passing through the Suez Canal and Panama Canal. The JECA Group's real core products are all shipped through smuggling routes. A small bottle of Tianyuan series product concentrate, hidden in a ship to Mexico or European Union countries, is then diluted and assembled locally into bottles of Tianyuan hair growth liquid, nearsighted pill, slimming pills, and whitening liquid. Such small shipments mixed in large merchant ships of tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of tons are almost impossible to detect. Even if discovered, the JECA Group can bear the loss. The profits from these products are so high that even if only 1/10 of the smuggled items reach their destination, the JECA Group still makes a profit. Moreover, the JECA Group's smuggling success rate is close to 100%. As for blood trafficking ships, they collect fresh blood worldwide for the JECA Group, which mostly pays upon delivery. When you transport the blood to areas under the JECA Group's control, you exchange money and goods upon arrival. If anything happens to the blood-trafficking ships midway, the loss is on the shipowners themselves. Most of these shipowners have strong backgrounds, navigating both legal and illegal avenues. Their extraordinary skills significantly mitigate the risks involved. Some are even directly backed by their own governments. In the face of immense profits, the rewards far outweigh the risks, making these blood-trafficking ships fearless of inspections, continually delivering blood to the JECA Group. As for Southeast Asian countries aligned with the JECA Group, the EU had long cut off most imports from them, shifting their exports to focus on domestic demand, as well as trade with Hua country, Russia, and Central Asia. One could say the beautiful countries instigated actions, targeting the high toll fees charged by the JECA Group for canal transit, are utterly futile, nearly impacting the JECA Group not at all. Without reciprocal measures, the shipping fleets of Europe, America, and other countries can only take the traditional route through the Malacca Strait. In this canal struggle, the happiest are the three nations along the Malacca Strait: Temasek, Johor, and Jawa. Initially, they thought their shipping business would decline sharply with the opening of the Kra Isthmus Canal. However, due to the JECA Group's dual-rated pricing, EU countries' ships still navigate the Malacca Strait, and though their interests suffered a bit, it was far from the worst-case scenario they had expected. They initially thought that once the Kra Isthmus Canal was operational, only about 20 to 30% of the ships would continue to use the Malacca Strait. Especially Temasek, their entire country practically lives off the Malacca Strait. Without it, their country would almost lose its significance. This is the rebirth of Temasek. The Kra Isthmus Canal does not threaten our position. It also indicates that the Malacca Strait remains the world's most crucial golden waterway and the maritime lifeline of East Asia. Temasek, positioned at the heart of the Malacca Strait, is destined to thrive, remaining prosperous for centuries to come. Conversely, the JECA Group's foolish arrogance is pushing them further away from mainstream international society, dooming them to eventually collapse and disband. Victory will undoubtedly belong to the great Temasek. On January 21, 2029, Temasek's largest official voice piece, the Temasek National Newspaper, published an article prematurely declaring Temasek's victory in this canal struggle. Temasek citizens eagerly bought this edition of the newspaper, while mocking the JECA Group's bizarre maneuvers. When the Kra Isthmus Canal was being built, the JECA Group had bullied Temasek. Even their president personally went to JECA Group, bowing down to Su Jie, offering apologies and heavy compensations to get through that storm. Many Temasek citizens conveniently overlooked the fact that it was Temasek that first caused trouble at the Kra Isthmus Bridge Canal Pier, provoking retaliation from the JECA Group. They only remembered being bullied by the JECA Group, which extorted $1.743 billion in so-called canal pier repair and downtime fees from them. People generally favor their own regardless of reason, and the same goes on a national level. Temasek citizens were jubilant, unilaterally believing they had won. However, Temasek doesn't realize that they are celebrating too early. Just 3 days after the publication of that article, at the narrowest point of the Malacca Strait, appeared a ship with no flag displayed or visible evidence of its country of origin. Under the night sky with sparse stars and a bright moon, the unmarked ship sailed in. On the deck of the bow, several figures stood here. They all shared a common identity: genetic warriors from the steel camp of the JECA Group. For such a top-secret mission, genetic warriors were the most suitable candidates. "We have arrived." Captain Lu Zongqing of the genetic warriors checked their position and walked to the ship's side. With his enhanced vision, he could already see the sandy sludge on the shore in the darkness. They were currently in the narrowest part of the Malacca Strait, only 2.8 kilometers wide, with 37 sandbars and reefs further obstructing the navigation of the Malacca Strait. This time, Lu Zongqing and his genetic warriors were here to block the Strait Canal. For this, they had prepared a secret weapon. Open the discharge port and pour the expanding kelp sludge into the sea. Lu Zongqing gave the order. A thick rubber pipe, thicker than a person's waist, was drawn from the freighter. With the operation of the electric pump, the pipe vibrated violently, and a blue viscous substance spewed out into the sea. This was the expanding kelp sludge developed by the JECA Group. Under the sea, this expanding kelp sludge began to dilute upon contact with water, and its texture and chemical nature changed. Meanwhile, several genetic warriors opened sacks and threw out a large number of kelp seedlings. Once these kelp seedlings entered the sea and came into contact with the expanding kelp sludge, they began to grow wildly, rooting directly at the bottom of the sea. As Lu Zongqing and his team sprinkled the mixture, the ship moved like a seeding vessel, with the sea as their field, continuously planting kelp. In less than half an hour, Lu Zongqing and his team had circled the sea area. The diluted expanding kelp sludge, along with the specially prepared kelp, continued to spread under the influence of ocean currents, growing rapidly throughout the narrow strait region. After completing their mission, Lu Zongqing and the others started the ship and sailed to the opposite side of the Malacca Strait, as if nothing had happened. After the ship left, the kelp in the sea continued to grow. The expanding kelp sludge was more powerful than any fertilizer, and the kelp seedlings grew larger and larger. In the following days, the kelp grew incessantly, reaching unprecedented heights. 1 meter, 10 meters, 50 meters. 3 days later, a large ocean-going freighter named Almeida from a beautiful country shipping company sailed over. The ship could carry 100,000 tons of cargo and could load and unload 9,500 standard containers, making it a giant on the sea. In the ship's cockpit, Captain Wilt was holding a cup of coffee while enjoying the sunset. As a frequent traveler of the Malacca route, Captain Wilt was extremely familiar with the Malacca Strait. It was no exaggeration to say that he could navigate it with his eyes closed. It's a pity we can't go through the Kra Isthmus Canal. It would save us a week and allow us to dock earlier. I miss the hot girls at the bar in my hometown. Wilt complained to his first officer. He was just the captain and had no authority to decide the route. That was up to the company. Tell me about it. Blame the Jekka group for being too greedy. We have no choice but to take the old route. The first officer nodded in agreement. As sailors, they spent most of the year at sea and were weary of it, eager to return to land and rest. Just wait and see. The Jekka group won't be able to hold out forever. I don't believe they'll just watch as so much shipping profit goes to Temasek over here. Wilt was boasting about his insights when an ear-piercing alarm suddenly sounded in the cockpit. The giant ship shuddered, as if something had pulled it, causing everyone on board to stumble. The ship's speed visibly decreased. What's going on? Wilt's head hit the console, leaving a wound on his forehead that bled profusely. But he didn't mind. His first instinct was to look at the control screen, which showed a drastic speed drop and an anomaly with the propeller. Boss, the ship's main engine is still running, but the propeller isn't moving. It seems to be jammed by something. I'm troubleshooting the issue now. The chief engineer's call came through, reporting the situation to Wilt. Damn it, could it be fishing nets or cables? But it shouldn't be. How could there be such things in the Malacca Strait? Wilt was puzzled. In all his years navigating the Malacca Strait, he had never encountered such a situation. The Malacca Strait was an international golden waterway, regularly maintained by the strait management authorities to clear any navigation hazards. Besides, fishing and underwater cable laying were not allowed here. Wilt couldn't figure it out, but with the current malfunction, he had no choice but to send a message to the nearest Temasek Strait Management Bureau, reporting his situation and requesting assistance. Temasek's efficiency wasn't high. After several hours, Wilt finally saw the emergency response ship sent by Temasek. The ship brought 2 divers who greeted Wilt. After donning their diving suits and goggles, they dived into the sea to check what had jammed the propeller and remove it. However, as the divers descended and saw the propeller, they couldn't help but widen their eyes in shock. Several wide, dark green kelp fronds were wrapped around the large, thick propeller, immobilizing it. The 2 divers exchanged a glance, both incredulous. They had never seen kelp entangle a propeller before. Kelp is such a fragile plant, and the propulsive force of a giant ship's propeller is immense. The kelp would be torn and shredded upon contact. Moreover, the Malacca Strait was not a habitat for kelp, and these particular plants looked unusual. Let's cut the kelp. One diver signaled this intention, and then they proceeded, one with a knife and the other with scissors and pliers, to cut the kelp. Snap! The knife felt like it was cutting through steel. The kelp was incredibly tough. No matter how hard the diver tried, he couldn't sever the kelp. He only managed to make a few centimeters cut, tiring himself out. Damn! What the hell is this? The other diver's scissors broke, and he looked incredulous. This wide-leaf kelp was over a meter wide, and more than a few fronds had wrapped around, coiling multiple times. It was impossible to untangle manually. With no other option, the two divers surfaced and reported their findings to the authorities. What? Kelp that can't be cut with a knife? Are you trying to fool me? Wilt initially didn't believe it until he saw the divers' recorded footage, finally acknowledging the absurdity. So, what am I supposed to do about my ship now? This is your strait management's fault. You should compensate us. Your ship must be towed to the dock repair yard where hydraulic shears and cutters can handle the kelp, but the repair and towing costs will be your responsibility. These costs are approximately. The Temasek port official flatly denied any fault on their part, planning to later have a research institute examine how those bizarrely tough kelp had grown. Wilt argued with the Temasek Strait management a bit, but eventually had no choice but to agree. Every extra day the ship was delayed cost a lot of money. If it didn't arrive on time, the penalty fees would drain the shipping company dry. However, towing a powerless ocean-going container ship to a repair yard was not an easy task. After laborious efforts to drag the ship to the repair yard, other ships in the Malacca Strait also began sending distress signals, reporting propeller malfunctions to the Temasek Strait management and requesting assistance. Initially, such distress incidents occurred several times a day, but soon the number of reports skyrocketed. A large number of ships, entering the narrowest part of the Malacca Strait, got their propellers entangled by this tough kelp, rendering them powerless and adrift, ranging from a few thousand tons to giant tankers of 20 or 30,000 tons displacement. When the Temasek Strait management realized the seriousness of the situation and urgently banned ships from entering this waterway, over 100 ships were already trapped. For a time, the entire Malacca Strait was clogged with stranded ships. This busy international golden waterway came to a halt, and a large number of ships waiting to pass were stuck at both ends. Unsurprisingly, the bizarre events in the Malacca Strait quickly made headlines worldwide. A military strategist once joked about kelp entangling submarines, and now it had come true, but it was ordinary ships getting entangled instead of submarines. The Temasek Strait management urgently inspected the problem waterway. When divers went underwater to investigate, they found the area had turned into a kelp forest. Kelp was rooted and growing on the seabed, with the longest fronds reaching over 100 meters, longer than any known kelp on Blue Star. Despite Temasek's efforts, including using explosives, to destroy the kelp, the severed pieces drifted with the current and entangled other ships outside the strait, causing even more vessels to become inoperative. And these kelp fronds reproduced quickly, as if some substance in the seawater was prompting their rapid growth. Scientists studying this unusual kelp discovered traces of artificial cultivation, suggesting it was not a naturally mutated species, and eagerly began further research, but none of this solved the navigational obstruction in the Malacca Strait. Knowing the high likelihood that these kelp were artificially cultivated, Temasek immediately suspected the Jekka Group. As the group had both motivation and capability, Jekka Group was a prime suspect. If the Malacca Strait was blocked, Jekka Group would benefit the most. With Jekka Group's gene technology, creating such mutated kelp wasn't difficult. The real culprit behind the Malacca Strait kelp crisis has been identified. We have reason to believe that the Jekka Group, to monopolize international shipping interests, maliciously released these mutated kelp into the Malacca Strait, causing the vital Golden Waterway to be unusable. This is an unprecedented crime. The Temasek National newspaper published an article accusing Jekka Group, even though they had no concrete evidence to prove it. Other Europe and America media quickly followed suit, all pointing fingers at Jekka Group. Not just the media, but the general public also saw Jekka Group as the biggest suspect. Anyone with common sense could easily see who would benefit the most from blocking the Malacca Strait. Given Jekka Group's history, sending a genetic warrior to mess with the beautiful country at the Los Angeles Olympics and using a satellite to crash into another beautiful country satellite. They had a talent and penchant for this kind of mischief. Baseless accusations. We have absolutely no connection with the mutated kelp. If Temasek continues with malicious defamation, we won't hesitate to send troops to defend our reputation. Of course, JECA Group wouldn't admit to such slander. Their official statement denied any involvement, daring anyone to prove otherwise without evidence. They even threatened Temasek, warning them to stop talking nonsense or face consequences. Several JECA Group warships began patrolling the waters outside the Malacca Sea, with Magic Bird fighters flying over Temasek's airspace in a show of force. Faced with JECA Group's pressure, Temasek dared not continue their provocative articles, swallowing their frustration and finding their own solutions for the kelp issue. Ultimately, in this world, might makes right. Even if Temasek had evidence, there was nothing they could do against JECA Group. If your fists are strong enough, you can label a bag of laundry powder as a weapon of mass destruction and destroy a country with it. Although global dynamics have changed significantly, the law of the jungle remains unchanged. Weak nations have no diplomatic power. Meanwhile, as the Malacca Strait was blocked by the mutated kelp and rendered non-navigable, ships intending to pass through were dumbfounded. Clearly, this issue was not something that could be resolved quickly. With Temasek lacking a good solution, the ships couldn't afford to wait. The first beautiful country cargo ship entangled by the kelp took over a week to be repaired at the shipyard, and combined with the initial delays, more than half a month had already passed, an unbearable delay for any ship. The massive financial losses incurred each day the ships were stalled in the Malacca Strait were staggering. With the Malacca Strait impassable, ships were left with no choice but to reroute. In such a case, the Kra Isthmus Canal became the preferred alternative, being the closest and fastest canal route. Suddenly, applications for passage through the Kra Isthmus Canal flooded in, with Europe and America shipping companies, which previously refused to use the Kra Isthmus Canal, reluctantly giving in to reality. Kra Isthmus Canal, the Japanese ship Hongshin Maru approached the outside of the canal. Captain Ishikawa Junpei looked frustrated as he watched the pilot climb up from below the ship, and it was precisely the same pilot he had met last time. "Oh, aren't you from Japan? I remember you. Didn't you say you'd never use our canal again? So why are you back now?" The pilot saw Ishikawa Junpei and didn't hesitate to mock him. "Baka!" Ishikawa Junpei cursed inwardly. He had left the Kra Isthmus Canal, sailed through the Malacca Strait to deliver cargo to the Persian Gulf, and then returned with a full load from the Persian Gulf. But who knew, the Malacca Strait was fine on the way there, but on the way back, the Malacca Strait was blocked by seaweed, making it impassable, forcing Ishikawa Junpei to choose the Kra Isthmus Canal. Because apart from this canal route, the time and cost of taking other routes were too high. The extra distance alone would cost an unknown amount of fuel. Faced with reality, Ishikawa Junpei had no choice but to go to the Kra Isthmus Canal, even though the transit fee was double that of other countries' ships. "Sir, I was at fault last time. Please guide me in the future." Ishikawa Junpei put on a smiling face, humbling himself even if mocked. After all, others controlled the maritime choke point between Asia and Europe. "I have no time to guide you. Just pay the money and I'll let you pass. The transit fee for the Hongshin Maru is $2,450,000 US, plus other fees, totaling $2,580,000 US. Pay up." The pilot handed Ishikawa Junpei a detailed payment slip, stamped with the JECA Group seal. "Wait, this price isn't right. Wasn't the transit fee $1,630,000 US before? Why is it so high now? You must have made a mistake." Ishikawa Junpei's face changed drastically. The number was simply too high. "Didn't you study? Now supply exceeds demand. Our prices adjust with the market. Why is a price increase strange?" The pilot gloated, angering Ishikawa Junpei. Ishikawa Junpei's face turned red. "How can the canal fees increase just like that? Aren't you afraid of public outrage? Is JECA Group afraid of that? You can choose to pay or not, but if you don't use our Kra Isthmus Canal. Our canal wasn't built for you to use for free." The pilot arrogantly pointed at Ishikawa Junpei's nose. the attitude making Ishikawa's face alternately red and blue with anger. In the end, Ishikawa Junpei could only tremble as he took the payment slip, suppressing his frustration. "Fine, we'll pay." Although Ishikawa Junpei wanted to shout, "This is outrageous," and turn away. But without the Kra Isthmus Canal, their shipping costs would be even greater. Additionally, the delivery time would be too long, and failing to deliver according to contract would lead to breaches and unimaginable consequences. As a captain, he would lose years of salary and face many deductions. "It's better to be sensible early on." The pilot sneered, not sparing Ishikawa Junpei the slightest sympathy. Japan always opposed the JECA Group and even sent troops to assist the Chan Country Government Army during the Civil War. No JECA Group employee would have a good impression of Japan. After paying by card, Ishikawa Junpei, feeling very frustrated, reluctantly invited the pilot to the bridge to direct the ship through the Kra Isthmus Canal. Hongshin Maru sailed through the wide canal. The Kra Isthmus Canal had an average width of over 700 meters, much wider than the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal, and a depth of over 60 meters. Even super oil tankers of 300,000 to 400,000 tons could be accommodated. Along the banks of the Kra Isthmus Canal, Ishikawa Junpei saw 3 military bases and naval supply ports, armed helicopters, and coastal patrol boats belonging to the JECA Group. Occasionally, he could hear the traces of fighter jets in the high skies. Ishikawa Junpei speculated that there should also be an Air Force base deployed near the canal. The Kra Isthmus Canal is located at the southern end of the Southeast Asia Peninsula, and the deployment of an Air Force base here would make countries like Johor, Java, and Temasek uneasy, because once a war broke out, in no time, most of their territories would be within the strike range of the JECA Group's Air Force. Having traveled to various countries, Ishikawa Junpei knew that countries like Temasek, which were close to the JECA Group, feared this gigantic force expanding southwards. If the JECA Group continues to expand, it would be disastrous, Ishikawa Junpei muttered to himself. The JECA Group was already ruthless in extorting customers at the Kra Isthmus Canal. If they took control of those island countries in Southeast Asia, the canal fees would likely increase further. Unless they rerouted to the southern hemisphere, they would have to pay the JECA Group's toll fees for passing through their sphere of influence. But Ishikawa Junpei's thoughts were in vain. The JECA Group had already grown powerful, and limiting its development was easier said than done. Many shipping vessels, like Ishikawa Junpei's, were forced to accept the JECA Group's extortion due to the blockaded Malacca Strait, too many to count. Knowing the JECA Group was robbing them, they still had to hand over the money with tears in their eyes. With a significant number of shipping vessels rerouting through the Kra Isthmus Canal, the JECA Group collected toll fees until their hands were sore. Every day, a huge amount of money flows in. Besides the transit fees, the ships passing through the Kra Isthmus Canal also bring enormous profits by docking, repairing and maintaining their vessels, replenishing resources, and through crew expenditures at the canal docks. In the past, several countries around the Malacca Strait made a fortune this way. Temasek, a small country with a population of just a few million, attained a per capita GDP of $90,000, surpassing many developed countries, thanks to this. But now, with the Malacca Strait blocked, all this money is going to JECA Group. With the loss of maritime income, the 3 countries surrounding the Malacca Strait, Johor and Java, are still managing. After all, Johor has a population of over 30 million, and Java has over 200 million people with land areas in the hundreds of thousands to millions of square kilometers. They do not solely rely on the Malacca Strait for their livelihood, since they have other domestic industries providing income. But Temasek is different. With a population of only a few million, relatively weak industries, scarce domestic resources, insufficient freshwater supply, relying on Johor for water, it is an isolated small island country. The prosperity of Temasek's most important industries, such as oil refining, transshipment trade, and goods storage, all depend on the Malacca Strait. Now that the Malacca Strait is blocked, they have immediately lost most of their economic income, making it difficult to import resources from outside. Being an island country, Temasek relies almost entirely on maritime transport for resource imports. Many cargo ships fear entanglement with mutated seaweed around the propellers, resulting in shipping being disrupted and immediately leading to shortages of essential goods in Temasek. Food shortages have started to appear. With its small and poor land unable to support its few million citizens, the limited land is not enough for buildings and factories. In previous years, they have relied on land reclamation to expand their territory, and all food supplies were imported. As a result, 10 days after the Malacca Strait was blocked, prices of essential goods in Temasek skyrocketed, with food prices increasing tens of times, completely dependent on supplies from Johor to the north. Temasek is located at the southern tip of Johor, separated by a narrow strait with a 1-kilometer-long land bridge, created by land reclamation from the seabed. Johor's materials are transported to Temasek via this land bridge. However, Johor showed no consideration for Temasek being its neighbor or a member of the Thousand Islands Strategic Alliance, ruthlessly increasing prices. Prices of essential goods were raised more than tenfold to satisfy the capitalists within Johor. Soaring prices and the blocking of the Malacca Strait led to extreme dissatisfaction among Temasek's millions of citizens with the incompetence and cowardice of the government, prompting massive protests that soon spread throughout Temasek. Under the manipulation of vested interests, the protests quickly turned into riots, with not only civilians but also the military defecting and rebelling. Within a few days, the original Temasek government fell, and the new leadership immediately shifted its full allegiance to Beautiful Country. Politically, economically, and militarily, they heavily depended on Beautiful Country, openly inviting Beautiful Country's military to station on their land to build bases. Simultaneously, previously suppressed public opinion in Temasek resurfaced. Under pressure from Jekka Group, the former Temasek government had issued a ban against pointing fingers at Jekka Group for blocking the Malacca Strait. But with the new government in power, all controls were lifted, and Temasek officials publicly criticized Jekka Group. The newly appointed president spoke to the media. To control the international Golden Waterway, they maliciously released genetically mutated seaweed, causing a navigation paralysis in the Malacca Strait. Jekka Group must give us justice. Temasek's boldness in voicing such statements was beyond what a small country should dare to exhibit. The real source of Temasek's courage came from its backing, Beautiful Country. Almost simultaneously, Beautiful Country announced a large-scale military exercise with the Thousand Islands Strategic Alliance, dispatching 2 aircraft carrier battle groups toward the Indian Ocean Sea area. Even before the military exercise began, international criticism of Jekka Group surged, with attacks on Jekka Group's polity, economy, and practices from all sides. It was evident to any observer that Beautiful Country couldn't tolerate the loss of the strategically vital Malacca Strait and was taking action. The interests tied to the world's golden waterways are too significant, involving not only economic profits but also critical geopolitical strategic benefits. In July 1956, Egypt announced the nationalization of the Suez Canal Company, which was actually controlled by Great Britain and France. In October of the same year, Great Britain and France launched a military operation against Egypt. In 1989, as the time approached for Panama to reclaim control of the Panama Canal, Beautiful Country invaded Panama under the guise of human rights and anti-drug efforts. The so-called Operation Just Cause was a lightning war that, in just 15 hours, overthrew the Panamanian government, aimed at seizing control of the canal, disregarding any pretense of American-style justice. Because of this, the Beautiful Country began actively deploying troops. Both carrier battle groups came, along with a large number of soldiers, through sea and air transportation methods, stationed in Luzon, Java, Johor, and other countries. The new President Jesman of the Beautiful Country, when answering reporters' questions, openly stated that the Kra Isthmus Canal was becoming a strategic waterway under the control of Jekka Group, having a significant impact on the region's defense and security situation. Seeing that the Beautiful Country began deploying troops, several countries also started to tremble. With the Beautiful Country's backing, they began to publicly oppose Jekka Group's construction of the Kra Isthmus Canal. However, to everyone's surprise, even before the Beautiful Country's carrier battle groups arrived and the military exercises started, India, jealous of the benefits from the Kra Isthmus Canal, took the first aggressive step. The construction of the Kra Isthmus Canal imposes exorbitant navigation fees on free-passing ships, and many of our commercial ships have been forced to pay. This behavior violates our anti-monopoly laws. It is an unfair monopolistic competition, demanding JECA Group to pay a fine of $7.823 billion within 10 days. On February 18, 2029, India claimed that the Kra Isthmus Canal interfered with their natural resources in the Andaman Islands and decided to impose a fine of $7.823 billion on JECA Group. If the fine is not paid, they will block the western entrance of the Kra Isthmus Canal, preventing any ships from passing through. This sudden news shocked the world. Although India often declares itself as a prominent, world-leading nation, no one expected that they would dare to directly provoke the temperamental JECA Group. Even the beautiful country itself did not anticipate India's quick aggression, disrupting their original plans. India's bold stance naturally comes from their confidence. From the map, the Andaman Islands are an overseas territory of India, strategically located. The Malacca Strait lies not far east of the Andaman Islands, just a few hundred kilometers from the Kra Isthmus Canal, serving effectively as a natural gate. Moreover, due to the deepwater port in the Andaman Islands, India has continuously strengthened its military base there over the years, forming the Far East Naval Fleet, establishing the first joint command of the three armed forces in Indian history, and deploying 48 naval vessels on the island. These ships include patrol boats, missile boats, landing craft, among others. There are also 3 infantry brigades, a military airport, and other military facilities on the island. With this Indian overseas territory adjacent to the Malacca Strait and the Kra Isthmus Canal, India's confidence has soared, thinking JECA Group is highly likely to comply with their demands. If the Kra Isthmus Canal is the throat of maritime routes, then their Andaman Islands are a sharp sword pointed at the throat. JECA Group extorts passing ships, and India extorts JECA Group, achieving mutual affluence. Previously, India has done this numerous times to companies like Apple, Xiaomi, Huawei, Qualcomm, Samsung, Google, Coca-Cola, among other large enterprises, all of which have been fined by India, earning them substantial profits. Now, they set their sights on JECA Group, envious of the Kra Isthmus Canal's staggering profits. However, India might have forgotten one thing. Despite its name, JECA Group wields powerful military forces as the dominant power in Southeast Asia. Other companies may obediently pay fines to avoid trouble, but JECA Group's business competition has never been honest and fair. Because of India's sudden intervention and the approach of the dual-carrier battle group, the world now focuses on the tension between the Andaman Islands and the Kra Isthmus Canal. Some speculate JECA Group might yield, while others believe JECA Group might choose to resort to force. Chan Country, located on the side of the Mengjia Bay deep in the mountains, seemingly an unremarkable place, actually hides a unique underground world. At the foot of these mountains, near the coast, lies a massive underground base. Here, large engineering machinery can be seen everywhere, coming and going, along with a network of train tracks and underground highways, connected to the foundational underground munitions factory built by the JECA Group, extending into the unfathomable darkness. On February 20th, a train slowly emerged from the underground tracks. The train was equipped with dense firepower points and heavy armor, and over 2 squads of 20 genetic warriors and more than 60 first-class super soldiers were accompanying it. Such a grand procession could only be for Su Jie, the boss of the JECA Group. In an exclusive luxury carriage, Su Jie sat cross-legged, spreading out a nautical chart in front of him. Behind Su Jie, Lu Yingying, dressed as a secretary in a black business suit with her hair in a bun, was massaging Su Jie's shoulders. Those Indians, do they really think they're some kind of great power? Su Jie leaned back, resting his head on a soft surface, astonished by the intelligence report just received from India demanding JECA Group pay a fine. Their newspapers have been boasting that if we don't pay up, their dual aircraft carrier fleet will head east immediately to block our Kra Isthmus Canal. Lu Yingying pressed Su Jie's temples, explaining the news she had just seen. In terms of visible naval strength, India indeed has 2 aircraft carriers, with one being domestically produced, making it a strong naval power. You call that Vikrant-class aircraft carrier domestically produced? Su Jie scoffed. The design blueprints for that carrier came from France, the catapults from Russia, the missiles and radar from the Jewish country, the engines from the beautiful country, and the communication equipment from the European Union. They just built the hull of this 40,000-ton carrier and call it domestically produced. This Vikrant-class aircraft carrier is 262 meters long, 62 meters wide, with a full load displacement of 43,000 tons, a maximum speed of 28 knots, and can carry over 30 carrier-based fighters and helicopters. India spent nearly 20 years building this carrier, facing numerous incidents and challenges, and it was officially commissioned in 2022, with India announcing that it had become the 6th country in the world capable of building medium-sized aircraft carriers. India calls itself that. They can say what they want. No one can stop them. Lu Yingying smiled lightly. India's naval strength is indeed notable. They have 2 aircraft carriers, 2 dock landing ships, 6 tank landing ships, 14 destroyers, 22 frigates, 24 submarines, and 20 other combat support ships, as well as missile boats, patrol boats, minesweepers, and landing craft. They dare to demand we pay a fine because they are relying on the threat of stationing at the Andaman Islands and the strength of their navy. It seems it's been too long since we've made a move, so now everyone thinks they can take a shot at us. Su Jie stood up from the sofa, looking out the window as the train gradually slowed down, revealing some parts of the underground base. India's intent was not hard for Su Jie to decipher. The apparent naval strength of the JECA Group was comparable only to the combined navies of the 5 countries on the Southeast Asia Peninsula. India was not intimidated because the JECA Group had too many adversaries to confront, including the island countries of Southeast Asia, the beautiful country, and their navy. These adversaries believed that the JECA Group couldn't spare enough forces and dare not fire the first shot. But Su Jie was not anxious at all because, apart from the visible naval force, the JECA Group's hidden naval strength was the real confidence in their naval warfare capabilities. As the train came to a complete stop, a large number of genetic warriors and first-class super soldiers disembarked, maintaining vigilance and security. Su Jie stepped out afterward. It was a bit cold deep underground, so Lu Yingying draped a cloak over Su Jie and followed closely beside him. "Welcome, Commander Su, to inspect." A group was already waiting here in white naval uniforms, all senior officers belonging to the Naval Department. Leading them was Peng Hongta, a vice admiral, and the fleet commander of the JECA Group First Fleet. "Save the formalities. Show me your results." Su Jie waved his hand. Peng Hongta turned around and accompanied Su Jie, leading the way. This base was the secret base of the JECA Group's First Fleet, built into the mountain, hidden deep in the mountains, connected to the sea, providing direct access from the underwater cave dock to the sea, making it difficult to detect. Outside, there was a vast sea area, deep enough for navigation. The massive mountain served as the best nuclear shelter with multiple missile deployment positions, and the nearest Air Force base was just over 100 kilometers away, capable of a first response in case of incidents, a common feature in submarine base layouts. In this underground naval base, Su Jie arrived at an underground dock. Lamps hung overhead. In the silent sea tide, a bizarre and terrifying warship was docked here. This warship, over 100 meters long, had a spindle-like main body with a smooth steel exterior. However, if one looked closely through the slightly stirring sea surface, they would notice 8 shadows lurking beneath the warship, occasionally making gentle movements. This shadow extends from the warship, resembling the tentacles of an octopus, looking quite bizarre. The warship quietly docks here, and there are several such docks in this underground base. "Commander Su, this is our currently completed and commissioned Devourer-class battleship of the First Fleet, totaling 6 ships. The Devourer-class deep-diving cruiser, with a length of 246.46 meters, a width of 37.6 meters, and a full load displacement of 41,500 tons, uses Spirit liquid heavy oil as fuel, equipped with 4 T6G heavy water reactors, with a maximum speed of 38 knots underwater and 45 knots on the surface, and a maximum diving depth of 1,200 meters. It has a crew of 158 people and 15 genetic warriors operating the combat and navigation systems. The Devourer cruiser is primarily made of biological composite armor, with an average armor belt of 280 millimeters, possessing a total of 108 cells of the General Vertical Launch System at the front and rear, capable of loading air defense missiles, anti-submarine missiles, cruise missiles, and high-speed torpedoes, with a maximum carrying capacity of 648 various types of missiles and torpedoes. Additionally, the 8 living tentacles can spray a unique acid-liquid gun array and biological spider web. Furthermore, the Devourer-class deep-diving cruiser is equipped with two 203mm main guns, 4 11-barrel 30mm close-in defense guns, high-power biological radar, and underwater acoustic wave jammers, providing it with amazing defensive capabilities in the ocean. As Peng Hongtai explained, Lu Yingying's small mouth slightly opened. Although she had seen the Devourer-class deep-diving cruiser before, at that time it was not yet completed and didn't look as spectacular as it does now. This was the first time she saw the full view of the Devourer-class deep-diving cruiser and its parameters. Just listening to the paper data, Lu Yingying could sense the unparalleled power of the warship in front of her. Su Jie admired the colossal object in front of him, which is also one of Puppet Hall's masterpieces. Under Su Jie's command, Puppet Hall, apart from developing and constructing the Lanhai No. 1 battleship, was also simultaneously developing supporting warships. The Devourer-class deep-diving cruiser was developed by Jekka Group to complement the Lanhai No. 1. However, unlike the Lanhai No. 1, most of the main structure of the Lanhai No. 1 was built at Puppet Hall, while most construction work of the Devourer-class deep-diving cruiser took place at Blue Star, taking several years to form the scale of the First Fleet. "Is this an arsenal ship?" Lu Yingying asked curiously when she saw the Devourer-class cruiser. From Lu Yingying's understanding, the beautiful country proposed the concept of arsenal ships early on to build a large surface vessel, a super maritime ammunition depot prioritizing firepower strikes. However, the beautiful country did not start constructing such arsenal ships due to their obvious weaknesses. Since the ship is predominantly used to store missiles, boasting powerful firepower strike capabilities but severely lacking in reconnaissance, air defense, anti-sinking, and stealth capabilities, even small ships weighing a few hundred tons now have multiple subsystem integrations. Arsenal ships are easily targeted and destroyed in maritime battles. Carrying so many missiles often means thin defense, fewer air defense weapons, and vulnerable armor. A single anti-ship missile could disable it or cause an ammunition explosion, turning the entire ship into a huge firework on the sea. The current shipbuilding philosophy is to avoid putting all eggs in one basket, using multi-ship construction to reduce the cost of individual warships to avoid significant loss from the destruction of one ship. Additionally, the high cost of constructing arsenal ships and maintaining hundreds of missiles, each costing at least several million US, is a considerable financial burden. Our construction concept does follow the arsenal ship idea, but we have improved many of its flaws. The biological composite armor offers strong protection, we have biological radar for reconnaissance, the Devourer-class cruiser can dive into the ocean to avoid satellite and radar scans, and we possess powerful air defense capabilities to eliminate incoming missiles. Peng Hongtai introduced to Lu Yingying that, apart from the high cost, the Devourer-class deep-diving cruiser lacked significant flaws. In the current naval warfare system, the superior performance of the Devourer-class deep-diving cruiser makes it the incomparable combat core, making it very challenging for other warships to confront the Devourer-class cruiser. What do you think about India's situation? Su Jie withdrew his gaze from the Devourer cruiser and asked in a scrutinizing tone. "Commander Su, I believe we must teach India a lesson. If they dare to provoke us so arbitrarily, retreating would only embolden them and further infringe on our interests, allowing the Thousand Island Strategic Alliance to take advantage and oppress us more." Peng Hongtai gave his opinion without hesitation. Su Jie nodded in satisfaction and asked, "Is the First Fleet ready?" Peng Hongtai's heart skipped a beat. A look of joy appeared on his face. He saluted Su Jie and loudly said, "The First Fleet is always ready to eliminate all adversaries for Commander Su and defend our group's deep ocean." Very spirited. This time the task of confronting the Indian Navy will be entrusted to your First Fleet. Su Jie assigned the task to the First Fleet. "Yes. Rest assured, Commander Su, we will certainly complete it." Peng Hongtai's joy almost erupted. As a soldier, he also longed to make achievements. In the past, He could only watch his army and Air Force brothers shine, while his navy had no chance to prove itself, anxious yet helpless with the warships unfinished, limiting their combat capability. But now it's different. The Devourer-class deep-diving cruiser is completed, allowing their navy to take the stage and venture into the ocean. Especially now, Jekka Group has 2 fleets. The first fleet is deployed in the Bay of Bengal, mainly facing enemies in the Indian Ocean. With the beautiful country not involved, the primary hypothetical enemy is the Indian Navy since it's the only notable navy in the nearby sea area. Jekka Group has a second fleet, with the main base in the Siam Bay area, primarily responding to Southeast Asian island countries. Being able to initiate combat before the second fleet, Peng Hongtai felt enveloped in luck. At this moment, Peng Hongtai even wanted to thank India for stirring trouble. If not for India's proactive actions, it would likely be the second fleet initiating from the Southeast Asian island countries, causing him to miss the chance to achieve the first victory in naval warfare. Commander Su, to what extent should we fight? Peng Hongtai asked, as their navy had prepared many combat plans against the hypothetical enemy. Did India not boast about being a strong naval power, seeking protection fees from us? Then break the Indian Navy's backbone, seize the Andaman Islands, and show them the consequences of provoking us. Su Jie sneered, determining the fate of the Indian Navy. Understood. The first fleet will fulfill this task and demand an explanation from India for Jekka Group. Peng Hongtai knew that only the Indian Navy's whales and their blood would satisfy Commander Su. Several days later, after completing full resupply, the water valve to the outside ocean of the First Fleet's underground secret base opened. At the underground dark port docks, 6 Devourer-class deep-diving cruisers consecutively left the docks, their thick tentacles swaying the water waves, slowly sinking underwater, passing through the kilometers-long underwater channel, emerging in the external deep-water bay. Gurgle. Whirlpools appeared on the water surface, with the Devourer-class deep-diving cruiser's 8 tentacles expanding rapidly, ejecting huge water streams propelling them forward, instantly accelerating. Each tentacle movement navigated the warship flexibly, resembling a giant octopus. As the Devourer-class cruisers continued diving deeper, they completely disappeared, like a pack of wolves lurking in the ocean, swimming towards their respective targets. India. In the capital, Delhi City, as the most populous country in the world, India often touts its own strength, which is reflected in all aspects of its diplomacy. For example, the fine imposed on the Jekka Group was unilaterally decided by India's Antitrust Committee, an action that received substantial support from many lawmakers. Thanks to the active promotion by Indian media, the public overwhelmingly supported the move, believing that as the dominant power in the surrounding sea areas, it was extremely arrogant for the Jekka Group to bypass India and monopolize the benefits by building the Kra Isthmus Canal. Such thinking is not only prevalent among the lower classes in India but even more so among the upper echelons. At this moment, a cabinet meeting was being held in the Congress building in India's capital. Among those present were Prime Minister Singh Ranjikad, Minister of Home Affairs Rajiv, Minister of Defense Vipul, Minister of Finance Raman. The theme of this cabinet meeting was the Jekka Group and the Kra Isthmus issue. Singh was the first to speak. He patted the table and said, "Has the Antitrust Committee received any message from the Jekka Group?" Minister of Home Affairs Rajiv shook his head and said, "No, the Jekka Group has made no statement. We are now a day away from the 10-day deadline we gave, and it seems that the Jekka Group is unwilling to pay the $7.2 billion fine. Does the Jekka Group not understand the situation? At this point, they dare to provoke us." Minister of Finance Raman was very surprised. He was the one who initially proposed imposing the fine on the Jekka Group. Singh nodded thoughtfully, looked at Minister of Defense Vipul, and said, "It seems the Jekka Group has not recognized the situation. We need to make a move so they understand our stance. Vipul, arrange for a military exercise in the Andaman Sea as soon as possible and see if they become more compliant." "Okay. I will show the Jekka Group our powerful naval muscles." Vipul immediately responded, his eyes gleaming with excitement. If the Jekka Group still refuses to pay the fine, he will send warships to provoke at the entrance of the Kra Isthmus Canal, letting the JECA Group know who the real boss of the sea area is. This opportunity is very important for us. The JECA Group's expansion is too blatant. If we don't strike at them, they will tread on our heads. Singh continued to speak in support of fining the JECA Group. India's diplomacy has always been to unite with distant states while attacking nearby ones. This tough stance towards neighboring countries has often resulted in conflicts and manipulation of smaller neighboring states by India. For distant countries, India actively seeks good relations through economic cooperation and arms purchases. India's weapons have become a mix of brands from around the world, with almost all types of weapons from various countries found in India. After the rise of the JECA Group, the two sides began to share borders. Chan country's western border meets India's eastern land border, and at sea, they face each other across the Mangjia Bay. Being a neighbor of India, India's attitude is not friendly. With the continuous expansion of the JECA Group, India's animosity towards the JECA Group has grown stronger. The opening of the Kra Isthmus Canal brought this animosity to a peak, resulting in this action of extorting the JECA Group under the guise of antitrust measures. That's right, we must make the JECA Group understand our stance. In this ocean, the JECA Group must follow our lead and keep to the rules. The JECA Group may have some strength on land, but a navy with a century-old history is not something a newcomer like them can handle. If they don't understand, our dual aircraft carriers will teach them how to behave. Echoes of agreement filled the room, with confidence and ambition evident on everyone's faces. The blind confidence in India is not just among the lower and middle classes but also among the upper echelons, as this confidence is passed down from the top. This is because India's leaders always claim that India has caught up with the UK and surpassed the US, with world-class technological strength, on the verge of becoming a superpower. As a result of this constant rhetoric, the entire populace comes to believe it over time. Of course, India's military strength is not unfounded. The total strength of its land, sea, and air forces is 1.5 million soldiers. This force has enabled India to always aim for dominance in South Asia, to directly control the Indian Ocean, and to influence the entire Southeast Asia and the Arabian Sea. However, India's national defense industrial base is very weak, making its military strength highly dependent on the import of advanced weapons. It spends significant amounts annually on importing and maintaining these weapons, while the so-called domestically produced weapons are fraught with problems. It took over 40 years to develop the domestically produced Tejas fighter jet, which continues to face issues even to this day. The domestically produced Arjun main battle tank has been plagued with various issues from development to active service, to the point that India's own army dislikes and is reluctant to use it. Likewise, the domestically produced Vikrant aircraft carrier took 20 years to build, with more accidents than can be counted on both hands. This kind of military strength is like a castle of sand, looking impressive but easily crumbling with a gentle push, exposing its true foundation. Of course, as long as no one breaks it, India continues to be pleased with itself. Just as the cabinet members were brimming with ambition, the door was suddenly flung open. A figure, rolling and crawling, burst in, his face pale and gasping for breath, making one wonder if he might pass out from lack of air. This person is the Minister of Foreign Affairs of India. His sudden entry caused quite a stir, and everyone turned to look at him. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, gasping for breath, handed a piece of paper with a trembling hand and began to speak in a hoarse voice. Prime Minister Singh, just now, at 3:49 p.m. local time in India, JECA Group's office in India submitted an official declaration of war against us. JECA Group has declared war on us. Silence. The conference room suddenly became so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. After a few seconds, heavy breathing filled the room. Singh's pupils dilated, and he looked incredulous as he reached out with a trembling hand to touch the declaration of war, only to retract it as if electrocuted. "Why, you read it to me." Singh felt an immense pressure on his shoulders, making him too afraid to read the declaration himself. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, wiping the sweat from his forehead, stumbled over the words as he read the contents of the declaration. As everyone knows, for more than a month, we have been troubled by the Kra Isthmus Canal issue. We have persistently and patiently tried to reach an agreement with neighboring countries on the principles of equality and indivisible security, only to be met with despicable deceit and lies, or with attempted pressure and extortion. Meanwhile, despite our protests and concerns, external hostility and targeting have never ceased, even to the point of brandishing military blades, constantly moving closer to our borders and threatening to gag us. We have exerted our utmost efforts to mediate the situation through peaceful means, but all in vain. We have repeatedly expressed friendship to the outside world and offered the closest cooperation when necessary. However, goodwill cannot be unilateral. There must be a response from the other side. We can no longer sit idly by and watch what is happening. Every enemy who dares to covet the territory and interests of the JECA Group will face our relentless and brutal retaliation. Therefore, I, Su Jie, in the name of the Commander-in-Chief of the JECA Group's armed forces, hereby formally declare war on India, proclaiming to the world that any and all treaties, agreements, and contracts related to the relationship between the two sides are null and void, hereby announced. February 26, 2029. After reading it in full, not only was the Minister of Foreign Affairs drenched in sweat, but so was everyone else in the conference room. Madman, JECA Group is a madman. Su Jie is a madman. Singh took the declaration of war with trembling hands, his face changing colors like a neon light. He had only intended to extort JECA Group, never expecting JECA Group to directly declare war on India. It was something he had never encountered before. In the past, they had extorted many large companies, but those companies either paid the fines obediently or withdrew from the Indian market. None ever dared to confront India directly, let alone declare war. If we revoke the fine now, can the war be stopped? The Minister of Finance's voice was no longer lofty because he knew he had played too far. JECA Group's tough declaration of war was not the outcome India had hoped to see. Regardless of whether they could win, war always brings losses, and India had no intention of spearheading for the beautiful country. Impossible, they have already formally declared war on us. If we back down now, what will our people think of us? How will the world view us? The Minister of Interior roared, his face pale with anger. Now there is only one path left, to defeat JECA Group. Our navy is still stronger than JECA Group's. Singh took a deep breath, his gaze fixed anxiously on the Minister of Defense. Rest assured, everyone, our Indian Navy will surely bring victory to the country. I will immediately mobilize the troops to go to war against JECA Group. Seeing everyone's eyes on him, the Minister of Defense had no choice but to hit his chest and promise firmly. Singh felt slightly relieved, at least the Navy had combat power. JECA Group might not launch a land attack. After all, India is a large country, and JECA Group couldn't have such an appetite. They also didn't lack for soldiers among their population of over 1 billion. At sea, India held the advantage. It was JECA Group that should be worried. Everyone, we must retaliate against JECA Group's provocation. Bring me pen and ink. I also want to draft a declaration of war against JECA Group. Yes, India will surely win. Everyone stood up, their morale slowly being lifted. On this day, February 26, 2029, JECA Group suddenly handed over a declaration of war to India, and on the same day, India also handed over a declaration of war to JECA Group. Both sides entered a state of war. This sudden news shook the entire international community. Even those who believed that JECA Group would strike back thought it would be by sending warships to escort the Kra Isthmus Canal, not by directly declaring war. But no matter how the outside world reacted, the war between JECA Group and India had become inevitable. While India was actively mobilizing troops, at 4:20 a.m. on the 27th, near the sea area of the Andaman Islands, beneath the deep, dark ocean surface, 2 massive warships were already cruising there. These were 2 Devourer-class deep-diving cruisers, named Ilova River and Salween. The naming rules for the Devourer-class deep-diving cruisers were based on rivers in Southeast Asia. For instance, these 2 Devourer-class deep-diving cruisers were named after the Ilova River and the Salween River, 2 rivers with abundant water flow. It was deep into the night. The waves on the sea surged, and beneath the surface, two cruisers carrying out a military mission began to slowly ascend. The Ilova River cruiser, with Captain Tu Fingpu standing in the command room, staring at the biological radar's feedback scan, cross-referencing the satellite's aerial reconnaissance map to confirm the accuracy of the route and location. Tu Fingpu was not only the captain of the Ilova River but also a genetic warrior. Input the enemy ship position parameters. Activate the anti-ship missile autonomous recognition radar system. Ascend to the surface. Prepare for launch. Contact the Salween. Attack at the agreed time promptly. A series of orders were transmitted from the command room, immediately making the cruiser busy. Some began to debug and check the missile status to ensure a smooth launch process. Others kept their eyes on the sonar display and radar screen, constantly monitoring subtle changes outside to avoid premature exposure of the warship during the ascent. Additionally, genetic warriors controlled the Ilova River cruiser's 8 armed tentacles, slowly stirring the water, ascending to the surface. Under the silent night sea, a massive spindle-shaped object leaped out of the water like a whale, displacing tons and tons of seawater from both sides. The Ilova River cruiser emerged from below the surface, with a displacement of over 40,000 tons floating like a small mountain on the sea. The 8 armed tentacles twisted and swayed underwater, a spectacular sight. Click, click, click. After surfacing, the vertical launch system covers on the Ilova River cruiser opened one by one. With a flash of light, one anti-ship missile after another ignited and launched from the warship. These anti-ship missiles come in 2 varieties: the Swordfish supersonic anti-ship missile and the Flying Fish subsonic anti-ship missile, with the former being fast and hard to defend against, but costly, while the latter is slower, easier to defend against, and more affordable. Among them, the Swordfish supersonic anti-ship missile is newly developed by the JECA Group, incorporating many Kuanping rocket technologies, mixed with spiritual materials to easily reach several times the speed of sound. The Flying Fish anti-ship missiles have been around for a while, previously fired from Magic Bird fighters and used to sink the Siam Navy's aircraft carrier. Now, they have been adapted to ship-launched models effortlessly. With the firelight soaring, numerous anti-ship missiles began their sprint towards the target, most of them being subsonic Flying Fish anti-ship missiles, with a few Swordfish supersonic anti-ship missiles. Over 100 missiles were launched in a matter of minutes. The Ilova River cruiser's launch silo covers closed one by one, and the 8 armed tentacles twisted as it quickly submerged back underwater. Meanwhile, 30 kilometers away at the Nicobar Sea and Air Joint Military Base, which has 1 military port and 1 airport, and the port has 4 large piers and wharves. On the topmost pier, 6 Kora-class frigates of over 1,000 tons are docked on either side. On the second pier, 2 warships, the Mumbai Destroyer and the Mansol Destroyer, both of the Delhi class, with a displacement of around 6,700 tons, are docked side by side. On the third pier, 3 surface submarines, named Kaiji, Kali, and Violin, each of 2,000 tons, are docked side by side. On the fourth pier, there are 2 giant shadows, one of which is the Jyoti supply ship with a displacement of 36,000 tons. The other is one of India's prides, the Vikramaditya aircraft carrier, originally a Kiev-class aircraft carrier from the Bear Country Navy, later sold to India, and has been in service with the Indian Navy since 2013. This aircraft carrier has a displacement of 45,400 tons, a length of 283 meters, and a width of 51 meters, capable of carrying 24 MiG-29K fighters and 6 helicopters, marking one of India's dual aircraft carrier stars. At the entrance of the military port, a dredging boat clearing the channel was idling listlessly. "Boss, I'm going to take a leak." Pommy greeted the captain, walked to the ship's side, pulled down his pants, and began to take a leak, humming a tune. As a common Indian, even he belonged to the Navy, though an engineering crew, here specifically to serve the Vikramaditya aircraft carrier. This Vikramaditya aircraft carrier's usual home port is not here. It was purposely dispatched here to pressure the JECA Group into compromising on the Kra Isthmus Canal issue. Just the right water depth at the Andaman Islands military port meets the Vikramaditya aircraft carrier's entry and exit needs. To prevent any accidents, they needed their dredging boat to deepen the channel. Boom! Zoom! Suddenly, As Pommy was taking a leak, he heard strange noises. Curious, he glanced over and saw cylindrical rods whizzing past a few meters above the sea not far from him in the night. The cylindrical thick rods, sharp heads, the spewing firelight from the solid rocket engine's tail flame were so distinct and equally terrifying. This shape, even to an ignorant person, was recognizably a missile, a sea-skimming, radar-evading anti-ship missile. Pommy's mouth slowly opened, his body shivering, not realizing his stream hit his pants, dumbfoundedly watching missiles whizzing past. After quite a while, he suddenly reacted and screamed in terror, Missile! There's a missile!" Like a madman, Pommy wanted to find the ship's captain to issue a warning. But at that moment, the entire naval port was already filled with the shrill sound of air raid alarms. Countless Indian Navy soldiers were awakened from their dreams. Some got out of bed on the warships. Some ran out from the docks. Many still bewildered. What's going on? Why is the alarm sounding in the middle of the night? Can't people sleep? Who the hell is messing with the alarm? I swear I'll make him clean bathrooms for a month. So sleepy. Why isn't the alarm turned off yet? How can we sleep with all this noise? These just-awakened Indian soldiers had no idea of the seriousness of the situation. India had been at peace for a long time, long disconnected from war. While the army might experience some combat, the navy had been idle for years, causing these navy soldiers to forget the meaning of vigilance. But just as they were still baffled, the earliest arriving Swordfish hypersonic anti-ship missiles had already entered the target area. The guidance heads automatically activated, beginning to lock onto the targets set in the parameters. On board the Vikramaditya aircraft carrier, a Swordfish hypersonic anti-ship missile struck the waterline of the carrier. The blunt-nosed high-hardness steel of the armor-piercing warhead fiercely rubbed against the carrier's armor, and under the immense kinetic energy brought by supersonic speed, the blunt steel at the warhead's front could tear through the ship's body, penetrating deep into the carrier's interior. In the central kitchen of the Vikramaditya aircraft carrier, dozens of chefs busy cooking breakfast for the crew heard a deafening noise. The thick steel plates at the top emitted an ear-piercing sound as they twisted and tore. Then a white cylindrical missile got stuck there, the warhead still flashing with a blinking red light. The chefs in the kitchen looked up at the steaming anti-ship missile. Their legs turned to jelly, bodies trembled. Some were so scared they wet themselves. "Run!" Finally, a chef came to his senses, but just as the word left his mouth, the delayed fuse of the Swordfish anti-ship missile detonated. Bang! A terrifying explosion occurred. The Swordfish anti-ship missile was 10 meters long and weighed 7 tons, with a semi-armor-piercing warhead of 900 kilograms. When the 900-kilogram warhead detonated, the power was like a firecracker in a bottle. The central part of the Vikramaditya carrier arched high, dazzling flames and fragments of steel spewed out, and the massive shockwave from the explosion severely damaged the ship's structure, breaching below the waterline, causing massive amounts of seawater to flood in. Those within the explosion's range, both chefs and soldiers, were blown to pieces, dying gruesomely. In the violent explosion, soldiers resting on the carrier were thrown around, smashing their heads, causing them to bleed profusely. As the explosion was located in the front central part of the carrier, the powerful shockwave directly lifted the steel deck, and the neatly parked aircraft on the carrier's deck were also damaged in the violent explosion, many being blown off into the sea by the shockwave. From a distance, the once mighty and majestic Vikramaditya carrier now had a gaping hole with a diameter of over 10 meters on the deck. Flames were pouring out from the gap, and the right side of the carrier also had a hole, with seawater continuously gushing into the body. It was only at this moment, hearing the explosion and seeing the blazing fire, that the Indian Navy in the naval port finally realized they were under attack. But it was already too late for them, as the Alova River cruiser had fired its missiles from just tens of kilometers away, an exceedingly short distance. Although India had also deployed anti-missile systems near the naval port, the early warning radar needed time to detect the missiles, then had to relay the data to the fire control radar, which would then track the incoming missiles to guide their air defense missiles for interception. This process required time. Moreover, the anti-ship missiles flew at low altitudes over the sea, greatly reducing their chances of being detected by radar. With the missiles launched from tens of kilometers away, the distance was too short to allow India's anti-missile system to defend effectively. One by one, the air defense missiles, like roaming killers, intruded into the naval port area, autonomously searching for and locking onto targets, diving towards one warship after another. The sudden anti-ship missile attack threw the Indian Navy into chaos. Some Navy soldiers were stunned on the spot, while others screamed loudly. Due to a lack of training, many Navy soldiers didn't know what to do at this moment. Start the ship immediately. Get it moving. Maneuver the rapid-firing cannon and close-in defense gun. Shoot down those missiles. Contact the shore-based missile defense units and launch air defense missiles. Release chaff. Disrupt the accuracy of those anti-ship missiles. Stop running aimlessly. Get to the ship's controls quickly. Some Indian naval officers on site maintained their professionalism. The Navy, requiring highly technical knowledge, had many personnel who had studied in Europe and America. It's undeniable that some were incompetent leeches, but some officers maintained the appropriate combat skills. A few soldiers, under the command of officers, hurriedly went to operate the weapons, trying to use air defense missiles and close-in weapons, but it was too late. In the pitch-black night, the piercing air raid sirens resounded. Anti-ship missiles surged rapidly, launching crazy destruction on the warships docked at the piers and wharfs. Explosions occurred throughout the entire naval port. 4:38 a.m., a Swordfish supersonic anti-ship missile pierced through the 36,000-ton Jyoti supply ship. The large but thin-hulled supply ship was loaded with vast amounts of supplies, storing 10,500 tons of fuel, 250 tons of water, and 880 tons of ammunition. This Jyoti supply ship was specifically for supplying the Vikramaditya carrier, and much of the fuel was aviation fuel for the carrier-based fighter jets. As luck would have it, this Swordfish anti-ship missile struck exactly in the fuel storage area of the supply ship. Or perhaps because most of the supply ship space was used for fuel, it was harder to miss the critical spot than to hit it. When the anti-ship missile exploded, it immediately ignited this aviation fuel, creating an unprecedentedly spectacular explosion. Starting from the bow, the Jyoti supply ship began to burn explosively section by section. The 36,000-ton warship had almost its entire superstructure blown off in the violent explosions, with flames reaching over 400 meters high, like a fiery volcano. Not a single one of the more than 200 Navy soldiers aboard the supply ship survived. 4:41 a.m. A Flying Fish subsonic anti-ship missile skimmed the sea surface and pierced the bow of a 1,000-ton Kora-class frigate. The anti-ship missile warhead's hundreds of kilograms of high-intensity TNT explosive proved to be unbearable for the mere 1,000-ton frigate. Just one anti-ship missile blew away most of the bow of this 1,000-ton Kora-class frigate, exposing internal lines sparking with electricity and twisted steel. Seawater surged into the hull, the stern rising high, and propellers exposed above the water. In just a few minutes, the warship disappeared below the surface of the sea. 4:48 a.m. The Mumbai destroyer urgently started up. This 6,700-ton destroyer had its propellers churning water, and the 100mm main gun at the bow fired anti-aircraft shells. With the water-cooled system, it could maintain a firing rate of dozens of rounds per minute. For 30mm anti-aircraft rapid-firing guns positioned fore and aft also fired continuously, engaging the incoming anti-ship missiles relentlessly. The air defense missiles were also in the final stages of launch preparation, soon forming an even stronger anti-air firepower net. The dense rounds of bullets fell like rain, continuously shooting down 3 subsonic Flying Fish anti-ship missiles, but there were too many incoming anti-ship missiles. A Swordfish supersonic anti-ship missile advanced at high speed, and the Mumbai destroyer fought desperately. However, hitting a supersonic anti-ship missile was significantly more challenging, especially since this Swordfish anti-ship missile also had terminal maneuvering capability. The Swordfish anti-ship missile weaved serpentine through the barrage of bullets and then suddenly ascended at a distance of 2 kilometers. Rocketing upwards at a steep angle to 300 meters altitude, it followed a parabolic trajectory, bypassing all the ship cannons and close-in weapon systems firepower nets, and then plunged down, hitting the dead angle of the anti-air firepower net. The Navy soldiers on the Mumbai destroyer looked on in terror and despair, seeing the Swordfish anti-ship missile dive almost vertically down. Their first reaction was to grab onto nearby objects to secure themselves. Whoosh! The Swordfish anti-ship missile plunged from above, piercing through the deck and penetrating multiple steel plates, reaching the ammunition depot. In the ammunition depot, ship-launched missiles, shells, torpedoes, and anti-submarine deep bombs were neatly stacked. The Swordfish anti-ship missile crashed down, knocking over ammunition racks, causing missiles and deep bombs to drop and roll on the ground. Several Indian Navy soldiers working nervously in the ammunition depot turned their heads upon hearing the noise. They saw this scene unfold with their own eyes, and their hearts chilled, watching the Swordfish anti-ship missile fall in like seeing the Grim Reaper grin at them. Boom! With the delayed fuse ceasing, the Mumbai destroyer seemed to be stomped by a giant. Under the magnificent fireworks of the ammunition depot's catastrophic explosion, the warship was blasted in half. The enormous fireball from the explosion shot up to 150 meters high, engulfing innumerable soldiers before they even had time to scream. This 163-meter-long warship was severely twisted and deformed, the hull fractured. In the loud sounds of the catastrophic explosion, within less than 5 minutes, the 360-man crew Mumbai-class destroyer sank into the sea, with only half a mast emerging from the water. Ultimately, only 13 people on the entire ship survived. Beside the Mumbai, its sister ship, the equally 6,700-ton destroyer Mansoul, was on the verge of sinking. 3 anti-ship missiles hit this destroyer, causing severe flooding and listing, completely beyond salvaging. Sailors on board were jumping into the sea one after another, abandoning the doomed warship. At 4:52 a.m., the entire Andaman Sea and Air Joint Base was ravaged by anti-ship missiles. As the largest target in the military port, the Vikramaditya carrier naturally became the most frequent target of the missile attacks. This type of warship has poor self-defense firepower and relies on the fleet to provide protection with air defense barrages. However, the fleet itself had suffered heavy losses and couldn't protect the Vikramaditya carrier. A Flying Fish anti-ship missile hit the waterline at the rear of the Vikramaditya carrier. The violent explosion damaged its propeller, causing the already retreating carrier to be completely paralyzed. Deprived of mobility, the carrier became a sitting duck. One after another, anti-ship missiles continued raining down, hitting the carrier's hangar, igniting the fuel stored inside, spreading flames across the Vikramaditya carrier. Some anti-ship missiles hit the carrier's bridge, where advanced technical personnel and officers were stationed. When the missile hit, the violent explosion caused the upper part of the bridge to peel and rip outwards, resembling a steel flower blooming on the carrier. None of the officers survived. All died in the explosion. Some missiles struck the crew resting area. The blast wave shredded sailors to pieces. After several more missile hits, the explosions made the carrier riddled with holes, the hull torn open with gaping holes, causing it to capsize with the bottom up, deck down, slowly sinking into the sea. Due to the sudden attack, many pilots and sailors didn't have time to get to the deck to escape by jumping into the sea. Some were blocked by leaked flaming fires halfway. Some couldn't open damaged hatches. Some were blocked by the flooding seawater. The Vikramaditya carrier, fully staffed with 1,400 crew members, was preparing to set sail early this morning to intimidate the Kra Isthmus Canal due to the declaration of war by the Jekka Group. Hence most sailors were on duty. The capsizing and sinking of the Vikramaditya carrier caused a massive tragedy. Only over 100 survived the final escape attempts from the capsizing carrier, while over 500 remained trapped inside, sinking with the ship. When rescuers tried to cut through the thick steel hull with blowtorches but to no avail, the desperate efforts continued into the second night, still hearing the crew tapping on the hull from inside the carrier. At 5:01 a.m., with the sinking of the Kali submarine, the anti-ship missiles in the military port were completely expended. Yet the country and Navy's despair was far from over. The second wave of attacks arrived, from the Salween Devourer-class deep-diving cruiser, launching sea-based land attack cruise missiles, simultaneously hitting the airbase and various military buildings on the Andaman Islands, Cruise missiles rampaged on the airport, turning multimillion-dollar jets into heaps of scrap metal, destroyed on the runway without ever proving their worth. While the first wave targeted warships, the second wave focused on the Andaman Sea Air Base itself. Oil storage depots holding tens of thousands of tons of fuel exploded into spectacular mushroom clouds under the cruise missile attacks. Countless fuel spilled, spreading fires throughout the base, making the night brighter than day. These cruise missiles hit key targets across the base: barracks, soldier dormitories, munitions warehouses, radars, anti-missile facilities, dry docks, repair plants, causing massive casualties. Many lost their lives in their sleep. At 5:45 a.m., as the first beams of dawn pierced the horizon, the assault on the Andaman Islands ended. The attacks ceased, leaving only raging fires spreading across the base. Endless wails of wounded soldiers echoed, the corpses of the dead densely floating over the military port waters. Bodies drifted with the waves, washing ashore against the cement wharf, piling one upon another, swollen and bloated. No one could even think of fishing them out due to the lack of manpower. The surviving soldiers were busy fighting fires and rescuing the wounded. Many were scared into desertion, fleeing the base with unknown whereabouts. This assault concluded with the catastrophic blow to Country A's Andaman base. The entire base engulfed in flames, burning for 3 days and nights, obliterating Country A's Far East naval fleet that once reigned supreme in the Bay of Bengal. In this battle, Country A lost one 45,400-ton Vikramaditya carrier, one 36,000-ton Jyoti supply ship, two 6,700-ton destroyers, six 1,000-ton escort ships, three 2,000-ton submarines, and several small missile boats, gunboats, torpedo boats, and mine-laying boats, transport ship vessels. Additionally, Country A lost 68 military aircraft and helicopters, various anti-missile systems bombed and damaged, munitions and fuel depots on the base destroyed. This base won't be operational again within a year or more. Two Devour-class deep-diving cruisers perfectly completed their debut, bringing an unprecedented disaster to the Country A Navy. India, Delhi City. Because the sun rotates from west to east, while the Andaman Islands have already experienced dawn, it was still the middle of the night in Delhi City, which is over 1,000 kilometers away from the Andaman Islands. Bang, bang, bang. In a villa, the intense knocking on the door woke up Singh. Being elderly, his sleep was light, and any slight disturbance would wake him, let alone such intense knocking. Who is it? Singh got up feeling slightly disgruntled. He suffered from insomnia and had just managed to fall asleep when he was disturbed. Naturally, his tone wasn't pleasant. Hurried footsteps approached. Singh, still in his pajamas, got out of bed and walked out of the bedroom to see the Cabinet Secretary Campos and the Minister of Defense Vipu pacing anxiously in the living room. Seeing their pale and fearful expressions, Singh had a bad feeling. "What's the matter? Why are you so urgently looking for me?" Singh instructed the housemaid to bring tea and looked at the two men. "Prime Minister, our Andaman Sea Air Base was attacked by the Jekka Group, and the losses are severe." Cabinet Secretary Campos spoke with a dry voice, forcing himself to deliver the terrible news. "What did you say? The Andaman Sea Air Base was attacked? When did this happen, and what are the damages now?" Singh's body trembled as he fired off questions, breathing rapidly. "Prime Minister, here is the list of vessel losses. As for the casualties, they are still being urgently counted, but it is estimated that the number of dead and injured may exceed 10,000. With a face full of sorrow, Campos handed a sheet of paper to Singh, not daring to read off the long list of ship names for fear that his own heart couldn't bear it. Seeing Campos's expression, Singh seemed to understand. When he took the paper and saw the recorded data of the sunken and damaged ships, the losses exceeded his expectations, making him almost faint from a bout of hypoxia. When he saw that the pride of Country A, the Vikramaditya carrier, was also on the list of sunken ships, his heart spasmed. He collapsed while clutching his chest, unable to catch his breath. "Prime Minister! Prime Minister!" Campos and Vipu hurriedly helped him, and the maid brought medicine and water for Singh to take. It took a while for his complexion to gradually recover. Vipu, what are you doing? How did the Andaman Sea Air Base, which we invested hundreds of billions in, get completely destroyed in one night by the Jekka Group? What kind of defense minister are you? Is this what you meant by our ability and confidence to resist the Jekka Group? After recovering, Singh, despite being urged by the maid to remain calm, roared at Vipu like an angry lion. His shouts echoed throughout the villa, showing just how furious he was. The Andaman Sea Air Base was suddenly attacked by missiles, and the senior officers there were negligent. I have already ordered the punishment of all levels of officers at the Andaman base, and they will each face a military tribunal for questioning. Vipu hastened to defend himself. As a member of Country A's military, shifting the blame was an indispensable skill. Moreover, Vipu felt wronged. He wasn't the one commanding the battle at the Andaman base. He was only responsible for the strategic level. The failure was on those below him, not his strategy. Prime Minister, now is not the time to pursue responsibility. The Jekka Group struck us first, and they were certainly well prepared this time. We must be cautious in defending against any further surprise attacks on our other military bases. Campos reminded from the side, covering for Vipu, which earned a grateful look from him. Singh took a deep breath and said, "You're right. The Jekka Group tends to take advantage of victories to strike again. Immediately raise the alert level of all our domestic bases, especially the Navy bases. We cannot withstand another loss of warships. By the way, how did the Jekka Group attack our Andaman base? Was it with warships or aircraft?" Singh suddenly realized that he didn't know how the Jekka Group had launched the attack. Well, it's possible that it was anti-ship missiles launched from land. Vipu's face stiffened as he hesitantly replied, "What do you mean by possible? I want an accurate answer." Singh's anger surged again, and he looked at Vipu as if he wanted to devour him. Vipu nervously waved his hand and said, "Prime Minister." The response from the Andaman base indicated that they were attacked by a large number of anti-ship and cruise missiles. We are still investigating whether these missiles were launched from sea-based warships, from the Jekka Group's territory, or from aircraft hundreds of kilometers away. There is no definitive conclusion yet. However, I strongly suspect that these missiles were fired from sea-based warships because, before the attack on the Andaman base, radar deployed on the island had captured strange signals on the sea surface. The radar operators initially thought it was some kind of surfacing whale and did not raise an alarm. Vipu explained the information discovered during the post-incident investigation at the Andaman base. They didn't dare confirm whether the signals were from warships but made a reasonable assumption since the attack was so sudden. Typically, launches from aircraft or land bases would have been detected from the Jekka Group's territory, which is 600 to 700 kilometers from the Andaman Islands. It can be seen that Golden Waterway canals are such strategic points that great powers are willing to use force to compete for them. The Malacca Strait is the world's largest and busiest Golden Waterway. Now that it is blocked, replaced by the Kra Isthmus Canal, this maritime lifeline being controlled by Jekka Group is something beautiful country cannot accept.